Are you a senior leader who has amazing aspirations for your students? And maybe your students have amazing aspirations for themselves, but there's that gap. There's that gap between, where they are now and where it is they want to be. And it might just be that that gap is filled with things like distraction, disengagement, or unearthed potential. And I don't know about you, but have you experienced those times where you might have a one-on-one with some of these students, and again, you get an insight into their internal world. They're talking about who it is they want to be, what it is they want to do, what it is they want to achieve. But then it's like they go amongst their peers and it's almost like as if that conversation evaporated. Well, what if I told you that there's a way in which your capable but maybe distracted, disengaged students can emerge as confident and competent student leaders who go on to exceed expectations in less than 5 weeks? Thing is, this has been our experience working with learners and leaders nationwide for the past decade, and I'm going to be sharing with you our evidence-based secret sauce as to how we make this come about. So why am I sharing this with you? I'm sharing this with you because as a practitioner, I've been in that place where you're frustrated really, because there's that chasm between the capabilities of the young people and students that you're working with and where it actually is that they can actually be. In many cases, you have high prior attaining students that are full of so much, but their current reality doesn't reflect their potential. And another key frustration that I find these days is that although we all know that COVID is behind us, let's be honest, the impact of COVID is still with us. And so this is contributing to disengagement, distraction, and the sense of apathy among students. Well, I'm going to be sharing with you this 3-part model that has been a game changer for us at Innerscope. It informs our Innerscope impact framework. And when we have used this with schools, the outcomes have been so remarkable. For instance, when we worked with a cohort of 16 students at Onslow St Audrey School in Hatfield, 15 of them made progress in the areas of their actual grades and their attitude for learning. When we worked with Allwood Academy in North London, out of the 16 Year 11s that we worked with, 15 of them passed their GCSEs with English and Maths included. And due to this approach, we were very kindly invited to Eton College to discuss this approach and deliver a keynote to their Year 11s also. So just before I unpack this approach, let me just tell you a little bit about how I came across it. See, I had the honour of being a detached youth worker on the estate where I grew up many moons ago in Islington, North London. And let's just say where I grew up, it had a reputation that preceded it. And one of the reasons why I had this reputation is for crime. And one of my roles was to support young people on the cusp of crime into employment. And so this is when this scenario would play out, where I would have a one-to-one with young people that they would share their hearts. They would talk about, what it is they want to go on to do, their future aspirations, and some of the challenges that they were experiencing in their current circumstances. And then I would leave that conversation inspired, and they would appear to leave that conversation maybe inspired as well. However, it would appear that when they go into their normal context, it was almost as if that conversation didn't happen. And so I walked away from those instances thinking to myself, all right, it's either they were looking in my face and lying, or there's something else at play. And so I continued to be curious, and I came across a really fascinating piece of research from MIT. In one sense, it seemed unrelated, but I'm telling you, the resonance was unspeakable. See, the research was about leading change and establishing a culture of achievement, essentially. And what they found is that in many cases, for those who want to lead change, for those who want to kind of shift culture, there's a variety of ways in which we go about it. But if we miss core components, we're not going to have the impact we desire. When I embedded this research in light of what I learned, what we found is over some time, there was a decrease of youth crime in the Tollington ward in Islington and an increase of youth employment by embedding this particular approach. So let me go into it now. So, social scientists from MIT found that when practitioners, professionals are trying to establish change, there are core approaches that they need to put in place in order for it to have a long-term impact. So let's just call it P. We're going to put a circle here, then we're going to put an S here, and then we're going to say S there. Essentially, what they're saying is this: Oftentimes, let's just say with your students, for instance, we know in order to effectively engage them, you will do well to ensure that there's spaces and opportunities for them to pause and to reflect personally about their core drivers. And that's what this P stands for. This P stands for their personal motivation and their personal abilities. At Innerscope, there's a variety of ways in which we help students to reflect personally on their aspirations in order for them to make progress towards their actual goals. So the first P is personal. But if that's my approach, if that's my strategy just to inspire them personally, then that in and of itself is insufficient. This is why the second region is very important. The second region is what we call the social intervention. There needs to be a way in which some of these tools or some of these concepts are shared in a peer sense. So for instance, in the context that I spoke about when I'll have those one-to-one moments with the young people about their aspirations, they're going to go back into a social context. And what you might find is that there might be ideals and ideas that totally override what we were talking about in that personal engagement element. This is why coaching and peer coaching at that is so essential to our approach at Innerscope. So when you think about your context, when you think about maybe the values at your school, and because when we go into schools, we recognize they all have values, they all have these aspirations, but how are they effectively shared? How are students encouraged to actually bring accountability, support and challenge around the values? So let me back up. The first P is personal. How can we encourage students to pause, to reflect, and personally engage with where it is that they actually want to go? The second element is the social intervention. Are there shared frameworks, shared concepts that can be delivered collaboratively with those in a school environment, between students or between staff and students? Again, something that we specialize in at Innerscope. The last S is interesting. The last S is actually structural. What are my structural interventions that I'm putting in place in order to, again, set this student or set a group of students up for success? Now, when I say structural, what I'm talking about here is what are the common rhythms or traditions that your school has that reminds the students of where it is they want to go. For example, after working with a particular school in South London, they instituted that on the first Wednesday of each month there'll be a particular assembly that essentially will highlight the progress that students have made that particular month. At Innerscope, we say what you celebrate replicates, and essentially with that structural component alongside the social and the personal, the research from MIT suggested that the impact of long-term efficiency of an intervention with those three core components in place is exponentially higher in comparison to if they're not effectively in place. So again, the social and the structural approach is essential when thinking about how do we raise attainment and aspirations across a year group effectively. So how does this evidence-based approach inform the Innerscope impact framework? Well, we have a 4-step system that helps schools essentially create this sort of long-term impact they're looking for in a sustainable fashion. And it takes place like this. We go into a school and we'll deliver what's called our 4 Ps keynote, where we help students to reflect on how they're showing up and how it is they want to show up. And in that particular keynote, our content is designed in a way where, again, there's shared concepts that students can use with one another to challenge one another and support one another. So as you can imagine, this resonates with the personal element of the research and the social element of the research. Now, typically when we work with schools, we also deliver our 5-week coaching program. It's our signature coaching program that essentially targets a core group of students, about 16 or sometimes 32, that require that additional in-depth side-by-side support from one of our trained coaches, where they get to explore some of the themes that we speak about in our keynote in a lot more depth. We also work with staff teams because the research suggests that where there's shared frameworks and shared concepts, it contributes to long-term impact. So imagine how powerful it is when students have these tools that they're now starting to make use of, which can then be bolstered and encouraged by staff who are also very much aware of the tools as well. And then last but not least, we have Innerscope Online. This is our way of saying, actually, once we've left your school, our impact doesn't leave with us. Innerscope Online is comprised of modules that inspire students to reflect, think about how they're showing up. But again, there's pre-designed coaching questions for students to use with one another and coaching questions for staff to use with students, meaning that the impact of our visit is sustained long term. We also encourage schools to embed a celebration event, because remember, what you celebrate replicates. And as a result, again, that stays true to the research, the personal, social, and structural approach, all embedded in the Innerscope Impact framework. So if you're interested in finding out what Innerscope's impact could look like in your school, do feel free to tap the link below. You'll be speaking to myself or a member of my team, and we'll be more than happy to walk you through one of our impact plans for your school. But if you don't, maybe by now you might have realized that there might be some strategies that are in place that are not, they don't comprise of being personally sufficient, structurally sound, or socially sound. So maybe you might have realized that at this point in time, strategically, at least from an evidence-based perspective, it's incomplete, maybe flawed. And so what that means is it could just be just another day where, you know what they say, if you do what you've always done, you get what you've always got. You could do it yourself. You can go back into your context and think, actually, now I've got this particular approach. How can I develop what it is that we're already doing? Maybe we're doing really well with the personal piece with our initiatives at school, but not so well with the social element and the structural element. So off the back of this, you can go and implement that. Or you can get in touch, because we'll be more than happy to assist and guide and support you in how you can effectively embed and implement these strategies. Again, we've seen the impact that it's had with the schools that we've worked with nationwide, and it'll be great to see that sort of impact in your school too. So in summary, if you are a middle or senior leader and you recognize that you have students who are full of potential, however, their current reality doesn't reflect their actual capabilities, what we're saying is this: there is a proven evidence-based approach that can help them shift from intention to action. So what happens next when you tap or click the link below to book a call? Well, what will take place is what we like to call a listening session, really. And from that, we're able to find out what your day-to-day is like, some of the challenges that your students are facing, some of the reoccurring patterns that you might be seeing. But off the back of that, we will actually construct for you an impact plan, where we'll be giving you tangible tools that will help your students move from intention to action. You'll be able to use some of our approaches that can be applied, and you can implement them and embed them independently, or we can have a further conversation about how we can work with you collaboratively. So yeah, do book a call. It'll be great to hear from you. So before I go, here's some feedback from some senior leaders that we've worked with nationwide, those who have actually implemented the personal, social, and structural components in order to see their students shift from intention to action.
Hi, my name's Danny Coyle. I'm head teacher of Newman Catholic College here. I'd like to say a few words about Innerscope. We've been working with Innerscope now for 3 years. Prior to lockdown, it's all about motivation, supporting the children, particularly in Key Stage 4, as they prepare for the exams and the challenges that face them. I've got to say, however, since schools came back since the lockdown, the importance of Innerscope has grown in magnitude. The Innerscope work is absolutely fundamental to their recovery. Innerscope have now been in school twice a week since the start of term. We can see the young people beginning to get restored. We can see the confidence returning once again to their personality. I would advocate Innerscope to work in any school before the lockdown. I would say now it's an absolute necessity.
So if you like what you just heard and you're interested in Innerscope Impact in your school, click or tap the link below. We would love for you to book a call so we can find out about your context.